Yeah.
I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one.
Yeah. Man.
I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with episode 568. We welcome you to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, a show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Cavil, along with my co-host, Charles Bishop, and we have a collage of other individuals joining us, including Dave. He's in the building. Brian is in the house. And we also brought in Brandon to make sure that he can shake a tail feather. He's kind of happy up there in terms of his team, what they did in DC. It'll be interesting show, gentlemen. Let me first say, Charles, what's your thoughts on the ledge right now?
Well, first and foremost, good morning, Doc, on this beautiful, glorious Sunday. The birds are chirping. The sun is just that much brighter. What a wonderful Sunday. We got a full ledge today. We got to get into it. We got some people trying to hold folks back today, but that ledge is full today. It's full today. You gotta, you feel the gravity pulling folks down today.
Brandon, pull him off the ledge, Brandon, and tell him just to pivot to basketball. I know some folks have already turned their head to the basketball arena, gymnasiums, or just looking at the hardwood. You still got the hardwood. Get off that ledge.
The plug, Dr. Cavil, the plug.
Club Corbett. Yes, time to get the club. Especially after a long homecoming Saturday. Some of us know how to hit the club. With that being said, we're filming from our home studios and getting it down in beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. We have a lot of these folks in the airport. Some of them found a way to sneak back home after leaving the airport. Some of them just had a hard time waking up this morning because they watched it all on the television. We're going to give you updates, insights, scores. We'll even release the major division polls. We got some shakeups. We'll see what it looks like today, what happened. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting, educational, and data analytics. With that being said, let me give you an update for Dave and Brandon. Y'all can vote on the poll. Charles, you're welcome to vote on the poll. You can see it's in your top 10 every Saturday, then major, or one or the other. I know some of y'all just kind of get frantic when your Saturday going and things not going right. You don't want to vote. You just abdicate your responsibilities. I get it. With that being said, Dave, how you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. My voice is still shot from last night. It was a tough game to say the least at homecoming, but it was a good week. I flew in on Wednesday, did some esports stuff on Thursday.
Nice.
I went to go see the kids, get with the students on Friday, talking about top side, things of that sort, and saw what I saw Saturday afternoon, and went to the bonfire Saturday night, and I'm at the airport today.
Let me say, man, you look handsome there. That's a nice pullover, man. You represent well. I like it. That's how you travel through the airports. I like that. Good look.
Absolutely. Brandon,
how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great.
Like a cheese cat. Man, what
like Charles said, it's a beautiful day outside. It's not a cloud in the sky. The air is
birds chirping in that here too. Huh? Okay. It's
just crisp. It's just a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day.
can't say the same for our friends up in DC, but for us it was an amazing weekend. Amazing.
He sound like he's not ready to go to church.
Y'all enjoyed that homecoming. I like that.
Brian, how you doing this morning?
It's raining. It's raining here in Florida. There's dark clouds. It's cold. So, I'm literal. I'm very literal about that. Go look at the weather in Central Florida. It is literal. So God is not he's not smiling on us Floridians right now. But that's just how it goes sometimes on some Saturday mornings.
Oh, it does. Well, let me give you. I
remember brighter days.
No doubt. As I said, you don't have to pivot as quick to basketball. You got a little time for that. You're still in the mix. But that's saying, scoot a little big back from that ledge, though. You're making me nervous, Brian. You're making me nervous. Well, let me get you these score updates from mid-major and let you know what went down based on our top 7 poll rankings, and we'll talk with those teams receiving votes. Receiving votes in the mid-major last week, and that is week number 6, if you would. Fort Valley State Wildcats, they came in just outside of the top 7 and had the most votes there. They lost to South Carolina State Bulldogs. Not surprised that they lost, but that the fact that the Bulldogs, I thought, made a significant statement was pretty big. That's basically a top 10 program in Fort Valley State Wildcats. They went up the road, if you would, and they lost 30-3. Shaw Bears lost to number 1 Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls as the Golden Bulls' magical season continues. They win 21-14. Kind of pushed Shaw Bear out of their misery as the Bears fall to 4-3, 2-2. And I should have said the Wildcats fall to 4-2 and 4, stay at 4-1 in the conference race. Virginia State Trojans, they defeat the Elizabeth City State Vikings 36-7, dominate that. They playing some pretty good football now after stumbling a little bit early. They are 3-3 on the season and 2-1 as they enter in the final stretch of the CIAA race. Let's get into the top 7 where we did have a couple of top 7 matchups, including this first one at number 7. The Miles Golden Bears go to Clark Atlanta and destroy the homecoming festivities and really beat up on the Panthers, 49-28. So they improved to 5-2. More importantly, they have sole control of the SIAC race, 5-2. This is after starting at 0-2. They've taken 5 straight victories as they just jumped in the top 7 last week. Well, now they're rolling. At number 6, the Livingston Blue Bears lost to the number 4 Winston-Salem State Rams, 31-17. Good showing by the Rams, not so much by Blue Bears. Their magical season kind of takes a thump and bump in the road mark. They're 5-3, 3-2 as they fall to in the conference race. At number 5, told you about those Clark Atlanta Panthers. They lost to number 7 then. Miles Golden Bears, as we said, 49-28. So they fall to a overall record of 5-2-1. And even more crucial, in the conference race, they fall to 4-2. Bringing us to number 4. Told you about this Winston-Salem State Rams. They hold steady. They're at number 6. 31-17. They are clearly in the race for the CIAA as they improve to 6-2 overall and 4-1. At number 3, Virginia Union Panthers defeat Lincoln Pennsylvania Line 63-12. They are 5-2 and 4-0 overall. Yes, they had a loss against a conference opponent, but because they play in 8 CIAA games and only 7 count, that one for them did not count in the conference standings. So that is fascinating to see how that goes. West Virginia State Yellow Jackets lost to Wheeling, a close one here. Many people said they wasn't trusting the Yellow Jackets. Well, they couldn't get the sting going against Wheeling as they lose 35-33. They fall to 5-2, 4-1 in the conference race. And Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls, as I told you, against Shaw, essentially the number 9 team. They beat them 21-14, 7-0, 4-0. They're rolling. They have 3 more. With that being said, Charles, any thoughts in terms of the CIAA scores?
Absolutely. The Winston-Salem State score sticks out for me. When you take a look at Winston-Salem State over Livingston, that was I thought a great win for Winston-Salem State. Further legitimizes them in terms of being one of the top tier teams in that conference. And like you said, I think Virginia State, they've gotten back on solid footing. So those are great wins. Johnson C. Smith and Shaw, great game, 21-14. Like you said, Johnson C. Smith, they continue on that magical ride that they're on. So that was some good action yesterday, Doc.
All right, Brian, your thought in terms of the mid-major division. Any scores stick out to you?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm just thinking about, it kind of, I feel like a lot of those games kind of went chalk like I thought they would, to be honest. I was really impressed, though. I was checking outside of the SIAC and the CIAA. West Virginia State lost a game. Obviously, they were on a 4-game winning streak, I believe. Lost the game by 2 in the last 20 seconds, a road game. And so, just that one kind of stuck out in my head, a game that they against one of their better conference opponents. And so, good win. I mean, or a good loss, if there is such a thing. But I think for a team that has struggled to kind of find their place in that conference, I'm interested to see how they handled the rest. And Johnson C and Winston-Salem State, I guess 2 worlds are colliding. I guess that's what we got. 2 worlds are colliding. So as I saw Steve said, bear hunting season is over for the Rams. And so now they got to go. Now they got to deal with some bulls.
Yeah, it should be fascinating to close out the season. We certainly will get into that in the next segment, as you kind of hinted at, and it makes for a big closing stretch, particularly this weekend coming up, big time matchup. Brandon, with that being said, what are your thoughts on the mid-major? Anything for you that has you saying, or are you just
I think Miles getting a 5th straight win on Saturday. They like I said, starting off 0-2, and they've just kind of went about their business quietly, stacking up SIAC wins, and you look up, and right now they're in control of the conference. And when you look at who's going to get to the championship game, you're gonna have to go through Miles, is what it's looking like to get there. And kind of sneakily still in the mix, of course. Albany State, they beat the brakes off Morehouse, which was to be expected. So, you look at it, and they're still right there in the mix, it seems like almost every year. So, right. Again, as we know, the SIAC has eliminated division. So this next few weeks is, as they say on Drumline, tree shaking elimination, because we're going to find out the pretenders and the contenders is going to bear itself out. Kind of just moving over a little bit to the CIAA. I think I had previously written on sneakershoptalk.com. Definitely go over there, check it out. Shameless plug. Talking about Shaw as one of the surprise stories in the CIAA, and I think the surprise is kind of over with. They've taken some bumps and bruises. They still have bested their win total from last year, but I think their moment in terms of contention, barring a lot of help, is probably over with. So they went from a surprising story to a nice story, to where their program is still kind of ascending, with them beating their win total from last year. So those were, as I look at the mid-major, those were a couple things that stuck out to me.
I like that as a writer. Surprising story to a nice story. Well put. Dave, what you got on your mind?
I'm going to be quick about Division 2. Who's going to stop Johnson C. Smith?
That's the question.
That is the question today for me. They're so well-rounded across the board from my perspective. So I'm just trying to figure out, could Winston do it? I don't see it yet, but I know we're going to preview it later. But I mean, that's the big thing for me. Who is going to stop Johnson C. Smith?
I like that question. Very good question. With that being said, let's look into the major division. Starting receiving votes, you had Alabama State Hornets. They did not play. Hampton Pirates. They defeat North Carolina A&T State Aggies 59-17. This is after Aggies jumped out to 14-0 to really excite their fan base at homecoming, full stadium. But it was not to be, as Hampton just rolled back. Alabama A&M, the Bulldogs, they did not play. I'm going to give a little score here. Dropping out last week was Grambling State Tigers. They did defeat UAPB Golden Lions 31-21, final there. let's get in to see what those top 7 programs did. You have Howard Bison at 7. They lost to the number 2 Tennessee State Tigers, 27-14. That's 3-4 there. At number 6, you have Alcorn State Braves. They lost to Southern as they were down there for Southern's homecoming. The Jaguars ran all over the Braves, 24-14. It was nip and tuck, back and forth for most of the game, but late plays by the Jaguars, as they've done of late, got it done. And the Braves fall to 4-4, 3-1 in the conference race. At number 5, South Carolina State Bulldogs defeat Fort Valley State Wildcats. We told you about that in the mid-major. They are rolling now, 4-2, as they start to get in the conference play. Should be interesting. At number 4, you have Jackson State Tigers. They defeat number 3 Florida A&M Rattlers, 35-21. Classic matchup. It was 21-20 late in that game. Jackson State got a fumble, sack fumble, if you would, for a touchdown, and then scored a late one to really have the control in that matchup. So Jackson State improves to 5-2, 3-0, getting it done there. Number 3, just told you about those Rattlers. They fall to 3-3, 1-1 with that loss. And number 1, number 2, Tennessee State Tigers defeat number 7, Howard Bison, 27-14. That was in the Mecca, and that was Howard's homecoming. And they made a statement, I think, with the Tigers there. North Central Eagles, they just watched everybody play around with the food. They did not play. They're 5-2, 1-0. We'll see what that means. 8 first-place votes as they hold on the number 1 spot. They have the bullseye, as they even have a heads-up in the conference MEAC race, as they had that game in Circle City Classic against Norfolk State. And so they're 1-0 in the MEAC race as things start to go forward. We'll get a little more into that MEAC race and see what you think of some of those first matchups. But with that being said, Dave, I'm going to let you hold it down first. What are your thoughts in terms of the major division?
I want to give kudos to Jackson State for getting it done against Florida A&M, mainly because I feel like, from my perspective, I think that was a SWAC championship. I know the West champs got to play the East champs, but I thought that was pretty much the game for me that pretty much gives them on the road to the Celebration Bowl, so to speak. So they did excellent. With regards to what happened between Hampton and A&T, it was just A&T was unprepared again this week. And that's what it boiled down to for me, based on what I saw. Another game that was fascinating was the fact that Tennessee State is calling Howard's homecoming their second homecoming, so that's kind of rough. I will say that.
I think you make some good points. Brandon, since he brought it up, let's go to you, Tom. What's stood out to you?
I wonder what game will I start with. So obviously, when the game, when I was doing my preview of the game, you can go check it out. It was actually, looking at it initially from outside looking at it, it was kind of tough to predict, for the reason you don't know what Howard team you're going to see. If bad Howard shows up, then it should be a fairly easy day at the office for Tennessee State. If good Howard shows up, then they're in for a dogfight. TSU got off to a good start, and where I thought Howard was really able to make a lot of hay was with the run game, which is kind of what I thought that would happen. I thought that if Tennessee State could get out to maybe a multiple score lead that would necessitate them, and when I say them, I mean Howard having to throw the football more, I thought that would really play into their hands. And I think it did when you look at Howard having 28 yards passing. And this is no knock to Jay Sean Scruggs. He is a gamer. And we've seen it in previous games, him making critical plays to help this team win. But if you're looking for him to drop back, 25 to 30 times and pitch it all over the yard, then you're in trouble. And we saw a little bit of that. Saw him miss a few throws that really hurt. And even with that, I think that kick return, that 99-yard kick return after Howard scored, it was kind of like Isaiah Thomas has said when it was up by 3 and they hit a 3 in the fourth quarter to go up by 6, and that's kind of the game when they ran that kickoff back. You could kind of see that kind of deflated and took the air out of Howard Sales, and it was all over but the shouting at that point.
We'll get into some more talk in the next segment, but let me go to Brian and get your thoughts in terms of the top 7 at the major division this week.
Good wins for Southern. Good wins for Tennessee State. Let me see. How about? Let me see. Who else? Oh yeah, good win, Jackson State. Yeah, good.
Charles just waiting. He's like, he's not gonna talk about that.
Hey, I'm sitting around like, well, maybe about to talk about Grambling and UAPB.
Oh, for real though. Hey, game of the year. Been hyping it up all season. Yep. And yes, for me, even though the game, the results didn't go the way I would have liked them to go, it was a game that lived up to game of the year hype. You had an outstanding first half, big plays. I mean, match for match. Jackson State come up with a big play, FAMU answered. Then you had that third and fourth quarter. You had that third quarter where you had defensive plays, you had turnovers, you had the anxiety of, we got a 1-point game, and how long is this game going to stay as a 1-point game? I mean, that was fascinating, given what we had in the first half, that entire third to the middle of the fourth quarter, that game just kind of stalled out offensively. That was surprising, and I'm sure it was surprising for Jackson State, equally surprising for FAMU. And then all good games have to have a dramatic conclusion, and there can be no more dramatic conclusion than what happened on a third down. You're up 1. I know everybody's thinking, oh, run the ball, run the clock. Oh, no, we're passing. Oh, no, he just got sacked. And I mean, if I was in my younger days, I would have thrown glasses at a wall, but I'm going to take it as hard as I can hit it these days at my age. And I'm just like, OS. No, he didn't just fumble. I think it even caught Tiffany off guard because she in the broadcast was like, wait a minute, did that just happen? What just happened? Oh, touchdown. I'm like, oh my God, of all the worst scenarios. But that's what a game of the year provides. And then you get the late extra touchdown. So if you're a Jackson State, backer, I mean, you were happy because you covered the spread and you hit the over. And I mean, that's at the end of the day where people are really happy. Jackson State are happy because they're like, oh, we won, but hey, we covered and we took the over. Yay for us. So game of the year lived up to it. Exactly, Dave. It's all about the money.
Great cash, homie.
I stayed away from it. That's why I stay away. That's why I stay away from backing my teams, because I would have been twice as hot in that game. That's why I don't bet on my teams, right there.
What are your
Stay
thoughts?
away from betting on your teams. Never works.
Lesson learned. The other day, Charles, your final thought.
Brian, I think Brian hit on something, and that anxiety, that nervous energy, it was palpable through the stadium. And I say this, the football IQ people were out yesterday. All right, it wasn't the band people where a fanfare can distract 5,000 people. It was the football IQ people that was sitting around. I mean, if I'm in the press box and I could hear somebody distinctly say, "Why are we in man on 3rd and 16?" It was folks who down the distance yesterday, and like I said, it was that nervous energy, especially in the third quarter. It was. I could literally hear people, "Hey, Franklin's in the backfield. Look for the screen." It was the football IQ.
Yeah, football game. He got folks coaching for the stands.
Oh my goodness, it was hilarious. But that made it a great football game because people were so in tune to every play, and you really got that sort of nervous ebb and flow, whether your team had the ball or could you make a stop on defense. So it was a great game. It lived up to the billing.
Before we go into break, I'm gonna give a shout out to VJ Jones and the Southern faithful out there in terms of their big win over Alcorn at home. You could tell that he's like, man, I had no expectation to the season. His chest kind of came out a little bit. Man, we dominated the game. I look at the stats. I was like, I didn't know it was dominated. It wasn't dominate. It was a close game.
No. Remember, Dr.
They ran really well in that. Both teams ran really well, but they were able to pass a little better than Alcorn, which is the difference in the game besides what they were able to do defensively. But let's take this first break. We'll come back on. Go ahead, Dave, real quick.
Never forget, Dr. Cavil, everyone is dominant. Everyone is dominant.
I got you. You sure right. Everyone is dominant
Everyone
when
is
you're the one winning. With that being said, we're going to take a first break, come back on the other side, and we're going to unveil major division top 7 in week number 8. Ooh, it's getting close. It's past midterms. It's time to tighten up. We're going to see these test scores. It counts even more now. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Hey, grab me one too.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back, everybody.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. It's time to unveil Major Division week number 8. We'll get into the top 7, but before we do that, we got to see if any team dropped out. There were actually 2 this week dropping out. The Howard Bison fall to 3-4. They drop out of the poll. Alcorn State Braves, it looked like they were rolling. They've had to drop out. They're at 4-4, 3-1 in the conference race now. Let's see those that are receiving votes. Alabama State Hornets continues as the top vote getter outside of the top 7. They are 3-3, 2-1, 141 points. They did not play last weekend. You got your Grambling State Tigers as they improve to 4-3 and get their first conference win as they are at 138 points. And you got the Alcorn State Braves that fall out, but they still in contention receiving votes. They're now 4-4 and 3-1 in the conference race with 125 points. So let's get into the top 7. At number 7, you have the Florida A&M Rattlers 3-3. 1-1 in the conference race, 157 points. They fall 4 spots from number 3, bringing us to number 6. Number 6 is the Hampton Pirates. They jumped back in the poll this week. They're at 4-3, 1-2 in their conference race, 168 points after not being ranked. At number 5, the Southern Jaguars jump into the top 7 this week. Big win for them. They are 3-0. They've found a way to get it done. They're 4-3 overall and 3-0, more importantly for them in the conference race, specifically in the Western Division, with 3 big West Division wins. 176 points after not being ranked themselves at all this entire season. Bring us to number 4, where you get a little leveling at the top to some degree. You have number 4, South Carolina State Bulldogs. They do jump up a slot as they improve to 4-2 overall, 187 points as they were previously ranked 5. Bring us to number 3, Tennessee State Tigers. Even though they won, they slide just a bit. They're 6-2, 3-1, one first place vote, 190 points, and they slide from the 2 spot as Jackson State jumps all the way back up to number 2 from the 4 slot with their big win over a top 5 team. Jackson State improves to 5-2, 3-0. More importantly, I believe, because of the divisional race, they add a couple of first place votes, even take one from the top team. They're at 3 first place votes, 221 points. One thing about Jackson State, can they hold this through the season? It seems like every time they get a little momentum going up to the top, they have a tough letdown. We'll see what that means after this. And the number 1 should not surprise anybody is North Carolina Central, 5-2, 1-0 in the conference race. They do drop a first place vote, but they're still holding strong at 7, 223 points, and they remain at number 1. In week number 8, you see it. That's your top 7 teams in the poll rankings for week number 8. With that being said, let's go to Brandon yourself. What are your thoughts in terms of the top 7? I want to get your thoughts on this.
Looking at the top 7, obviously Jackson State got a big win over FAMU, so that was weighed a lot. That jumped them up to the number 2 spot. I can assure you, I was not that lone first place vote that Tennessee State got. I was not responsible for that. So I can get why that win may have dropped them down despite the victory. Looking at South Carolina State, obviously, or as AD Drew calls them, Benedict North, got a win over their friends at Fort Valley State to keep things going there. So I don't have a problem with them at 4. That Southern gets another win on homecoming over Alcorn. Hampton jumped into the rankings, and FAMU tumbles all the way down to 7th. I don't have too much of an issue with it. I'm going to take off my Tennessee State glasses on this one. I guess it's a fair poll. I think if Alabama State gets another win, they're going to be knocking somebody out of this top 7 in next week's poll. That's who you got to watch out for. But other than that, I don't take too much exception with the poll, even with us dropping down a slot. Nice job.
You can put your Tennessee State glasses on if you like. In your mind, did you see as a bigger win Tennessee State going to Washington D.C. and defeating a top 7 team at the time, Howard, or you look at the fact that Jackson State at home defeating FAMU in the match?
And this is completely honest. I think that the Jackson State and FAMU game, because as we have seen the past few years, and Dave touched on it earlier, it's been a de facto championship game. Whoever has won this game has come out of that division. So to get that win and position themselves to represent the Western Division in the championship game was huge. So because that game has such far-reaching ramifications from a potential, from a conference standpoint, from a potential Celebration Bowl standpoint, it does weigh more, because even if Tennessee State goes up there and lays an egg and they lose, it doesn't really affect them in terms of conference standing, because it's a non-conference game. It may affect them if you're looking at trying to get a postseason berth. if you lose that game, but you know they didn't have as much at stake, so I can get with Jackson State jumping up to number 2 for that reason.
Good analysis. Great analysis. Charles, I'm gonna go to you now. King of the Hill right now. What are your thoughts?
I think the poll looks about right. I was curious how far FAMU would drop. I might have probably had them sitting there at 5, but when you look at the records are what they are. Southern is 3-0 in SWAC play, so I can't argue that. I will say you posed a very interesting question in terms of Jackson State having momentum, and we've seen it before where they have momentum and then there's inexplicably something happens along the way. And I was listening to CC Taylor in his press conference yesterday, and it was very interesting to me that he, kept the blinders on, knowing that Bethune-Cookman is going to be a tough test. And he talked about the lunch pail mentality of his team, how he really likes the makeup of their team. And he used a term that I thought was very interesting where he called it we-fence, in terms of the offense and the defense, being able to pull together in some type of way, find a way to get the victory yesterday. And I told him, I said, y'all need to call Under Armour and get those printed up fast, because that's something that'll catch on, just the mentality of the week in terms of getting everything done on offense and defense in some type of way, figuring out how to win games. And I think, the fact that he had mentioned that, we haven't taken our eyes off the prize. This team is built for December. That's going to be an interesting question going down the stretch with regards to this Jackson State football team. I
really appreciate those comments, but TC Taylor's going to be mad at me. Last week I talked about the fact you had that collision course potentially of top 25 teams, top 15, maybe even top 10 teams with FAMU and North Carolina Central for the Celebration Bowl race. In terms of that matchup, well, that may take a back seat. But now we have Jackson State. That was a top 25 team, and they keep sliding up. Now you might have that TC Taylor matchup with North Carolina Central and Trey Oliver that coach with each other, very familiar with each other. So HBCU folks leading their alumni, I'd be interested in that match. So collision course there. So I know TC Taylor's going to shut up.
I'm about to say, I know everybody in Jackson, hey, put the brakes on that. We got Bethune-Cookman, then Valley. Hey.
Usually he answered my text. I told him congratulations, thank you, and I invited him on the show. He quickly went silent. Not yet. I did it last time. I get it, TC Taylor. We still cool. I get it. Brian, with Charles feeling so good about all this, you might have a different framework, but so please share it. Is that the pregnant?
Sorry. Yeah, I was doing double duty here.
I didn't know if that was the pregnant pause on purpose there. You know how it is. And I heard a little sniffle. I was like, hey, he gonna start.
No. What I was looking at is I wanted to kind of look at my personal top 10, and I still have I have Jackson State at number 2, so I don't disagree with that. Interested in the 3 voters that voted them first, but I mean, hey, when you knock off the defending champs and you have the and it's interesting to say, is it the most impressive FCS win? Because it may very well be. Is it more impressive than what North Carolina Central did at the beginning of the year? Is it more impressive than what they did on the road at Campbell? I mean, it is what it is. But I'm watching. My eyes are on Tennessee State, and that is the team that I'm very intrigued to see what those Tigers do, because I got a feeling that they're playing up to the expectation that I think the data and the metrics have had of Tennessee State over the last couple seasons.
The X factor.
Yeah. And so I think they got a quarterback now, and it's real interesting what your team looks like when you have good quarterback when you have good quarterback play, anything's possible. And I honestly think the top 4 teams have some good quarterback play. So, right now, you know, I say that with all, you know, humility, that I think the top 4 teams have some good quarterback play. And we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. But it's fascinating when you kind of see where teams are. And then I'm going to give a special shout out there to Hampton. You know, that's a team that I've quietly been rooting for. I was rooting for them last year, and they kind of let me down at the end of the season. But I know that was sort of based on some injuries. This year, look, that's a team that should have beat a top 20 team last week, and you know they came into Greensboro, and you know, look, my tweets were what they were. So I had a little fun, Dave. I'm sorry, but
I'm just wondering if the other Aggies went after you, not me.
Yeah, you know, well, look, no Aggies saw the second half, so there were no Aggies to go after me. I mean, you know,
Don't worry, Hampton's highlights, sir. Hampton's highlights on Twitter was more than enough.
Yes. I'm deflecting shots from JSU people who are keeping receipts, you know, from the last 18, 24 months, you know, so it's all good.
And Brian, I'm getting texts now. They're telling me you look great in blue, man.
Well, it's Sunday. It's Coast Blue, so don't get it twisted, Jackson State folks. It's Sunday. It's Coast Blue. Don't get.
He raised that up real quick.
I know, right?
It's Coast Sunday. That's, you know.
Good points when you talk about Tennessee State. In the next segment, we will look at those schedules going forward of some of those teams in the top 7, particularly those that had big wins. We'll look at that, but I'd be remiss if I certainly, as you kind of shifted and allow us to go to David and get his thoughts in terms of top 7.
I'll be honest. I think the big one for me is Hampton. I understand they're 1-2 in conference, but their 2 losses came up against top 25 opponents. I think they should be higher on this list. I understand Jackson going up to 2, even though I feel for Tennessee State, because they did what they were supposed to do. They shouldn't fall. But when you beat a top 25 team, that's what happens. You deserve to go up in rankings. Question if we I think maybe you should be higher than 7. I would probably shift Southern down, move Hampton and FAMU up. But other than that, I mean, you know,
I think that's reasonable, Dave. You come in here, even though it was a tough homecoming, you're reasonable. You're reasonable type of game. I think one thing that's interesting in this, and I'll bring it back to you, let you have a couple of more words to pull out your thoughts, is squarely the independents are in the top 7. We've pretty much seen that throughout the season. And we hadn't had a time where your independents consistently were in the top 7 with Tennessee State and Hampton Pirates being those 2 of the 3 teams. Go ahead, Dave. Give me some more on time.
Yeah, I think when it ultimately boils down to it, right, the conference, Hampton's schedule is pretty brutal. So their conference record's not going to be that strong, but they have, like I said, they had 2 top 25 opponents. Tennessee State, they're about to get through the meat of their schedule right now, so it's going to be fascinating to see how they do against your UT Martins and things of that sort. But I think Hampton's a really good football team. They're still doing that 2 quarterback platoon system. I think they need to figure out one. I think it should be made, but you know they'll get to it. I think they'll figure it out once they get into the skin of conference play.
And Charles, I'll let you come back here and get some more thoughts. Dave, I want to remind folks that they can check you out on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on Wednesday with the Hampton crew, and sometimes Brandon is part of that team, and when it works out, he jumps in there to get a little more discussion. And I think with these teams playing at this level, it gives a little more fodder in terms of the independent talk that we haven't had in years in regards to what it looks like from that perspective. With that being said, Charles, what did you want to add there?
Well, I wanted to ask Brandon, like going down the stretch here, UT Martin.
Well, Charles, I want to do that in the next segment. We're going to get that. So you're right. Yeah. We're going to do that. And I want to do that a little bit for FAMU. I want to look at it in terms of Dave, A&T. Can they find a way to get a win? We're going to look at that. We're going to do it for Jackson State and Tennessee State. So you're right in the ballpark I want to do. We're going to do a hard out, come back, and get in that discussion. So perfect time and a great handoff. Stick, we'll be right back after this break.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System.
This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in.
Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Now we starting to get these texts from these coaches and those in administrative positions and media folks. I'm slow down, man. Slow down. Let us do our work. My job is to create storylines. I talked to John Grant. He's taught me well. Create the storyline. Poll rankings. They sell it week to week. You all job is now go back and tell the players, be like, man, don't listen to nothing they say all the way back to the open up season with rat poison.
Rat poison.
It works. It works. Thank you for the coaches that respect it all and give us to all that information there. And I know Brandon had to check out on that last segment as he'd give us some of his time for that platform. But with that being said, Charles, you had a thought. We'll get in that framework and we'll get it among everybody else to break it down, and we'll kind of go around in terms of what that looks like. But open it up for what you were wanting to introduce in terms of some of these schedules as we go with it.
Well, just look at that down the stretch. Tennessee State. They have UT Martin at home. They're on the road, West Illinois, on the road against Gardner-Webb, and then they finish out at home against Southeastern Missouri State. My question is, they should be favored, at least in 3 out of those 4 contests, but what's the feeling?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, particularly when that last game, it has to be has a chance to be for it all in terms of the conference race. Winning it at this point, Southeast Missouri is 7-1. Tennessee State, obviously, everybody knows is 6-2. And when you get in the conference race between those teams, is the Red Hawks, right, are sitting at 4-0. While Tennessee State is 3-1, and right behind them is the next matchup with UT Martin, which is 2-1. And finally, they have the Leathernecks that are also sitting at 2-1. So it's going to be fascinating to see with that. I think Brandon was able to jump back in here, so we'll kind of get his thoughts in terms of what that looks like once he jumps back in here. Charles had a question for you in terms of going down the final part of the season. He talked about UT Martin, which sits at 2-1 in the conference race. This is your next matchup. Tennessee State is at home. You got Tennessee State at Western Illinois, Tennessee State at Gardner-Webb, and then you close out a season, which could be for a conference championship if things work out that way, with currently undefeated 4-0 Redhawks team that sit at 7-1 overall, and Tennessee State at 6-2. So if you would, Brandon, as you get back into it, I think your phone there is teasing you, folks trying to get in touch with you, talk about that big win. We'll bring that back to you in terms of your thoughts on that matchup when you get back to us. But let's look at the next one here with A&T, because I know, Dave, you're about to jump on this plane and make sure you get your seating spot. So let's look at A&T in terms of their final schedule and kind of get your thoughts in whether they can find a place to get a win. And I say this in all seriousness, not to jaw at you, but as we like to break it down, as you know, what is this talking about? And you've talked about consistently the number of points that A&T has given up on defense. I think it's frustrated you even more of what you've seen on offense and the number of yards. So now they have a Campbell team, sits in 2-5. Maybe that's the best one. It doesn't get any easier with William & Mary, Villanova, top 25 team. You got Townsend that's playing about 500 ball. And then you close it out with Elon, 2-5. So there's some spaces in their teams, at least record-wise, that could put you in a position maybe to get another win against the FCS opponent. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's 3 opportunities, and it's Campbell next week. Elon's our home closer.
Okay.
And then we on the road in Townsend. We've had a habit of playing better on the road, believe it or not, in the Vincent Brown era. So we're gonna clip somebody on the road. It could be next week against Campbell, but we have to be able to have some level of a run game. Over the past few weeks, our run game's been Townsend, but we've lost our top 2 running backs. Kendrick Christmas out for the year, and Wesley Graves is out for the year. So we're on our 3rd string running back right now. And last week, yesterday against Hampton, we had under 60 yards rushing. You're not going to win football games like that, considering that that's what the offense wants to do. Justin Fomby's the backup quarterback. Our starting quarterback is out for the season as well. So he is more of a pocket passer, not a scrambler like that. But he's also a gunslinger. So he's willing to take risks, and I think folks who watched the game yesterday will see some of the risks that he's willing to take. But from that standpoint, I think our best chances are going to be between Campbell and Elon. Elon, surprisingly, is not doing nearly as well as what folks thought prior to the season. And Townsend's going to be interesting on the road, but I don't see us being able to do what we did against Richmond prior to the bye week. So we kind of almost had a legitimate shot to beat Richmond on the road. We had a 10-0 lead, gave up 20 unanswered, came back, fumbled when we had to go to score. It was kind of brutal. But I just need to see something from the football team. Offensively, try to get our run game back and going. I think we might have a shot to maybe pull one upset out of those 3 games. I'm
very fair assessment. And one thing that you seems when you're watching A&T is they can play some pretty good football. But when those wheels start to roll off, I mean, they just disintegrate. It ain't like something like this. They just go left and it like pops off. But the question I really wanted to ask you, before we take this break to allow you to jump off and get on that flight, and we'll come back and talk about the rest of some other key schedules with Charles and Brian. Where is the fan base? And I know you will give a nice assessment in terms of with the project, not necessarily with the coach or the move. You told a lot of folks that there were going to be some times to kind of look at this in regards to, it's going to take time. What are you hearing? Are they still on board, or is it broken up in different compartments? I'm sure those that never want to leave, they're using all this as their avenue.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, whenever they use this as ammunition, the first thing I say is, we've lost to South Carolina State. We've lost to North Carolina Central. We've lost.
Yeah. Good point. Yep.
So going back to the MEAC isn't going to change the fact of all these losses, right? But
right.
I think right now, the fan base has been patient, but I think the patience has exited the building at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's like, I think there's still some who are trying to bring out hope, but I don't know if that final sum can stomach in a 1-11 season.
Thank you for sharing. Yep. And giving us that honest perspective. Well, let you get in there. We're going to take a next break. We'll come back on the other side. Appreciate you coming on this Sunday morning and give us some great analysis as you always do. Check out Dave. He does a couple of platforms, obviously with the Panthers, Sunday football. He gives his other show in terms of bringing it with us. And then he has his components on the HBCU Nightly, and you check them out tonight as well. With that, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side, get some final thoughts of scheduling breakdowns, and then we'll close it out for Sunday to folks get ready as they head to church or get into some other football and specifically get ready for tonight's shows to give you an HBCU perspective with HBCU Nightly, as well as making sure you catch up with Brian and AD Sports Wrap. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this last break.
Looking for the ultimate cultural experience of 2025? The Zora Outdoor Festival of the Arts is where you need to be. From January 31st to February 2nd, Eatonville, Florida will come alive with incredible live performances from the Laverne Experience and Sunshine Anderson. Immerse yourself in interactive art, take a journey through history with a new virtual tour app that brings Eatonville's legacy to life from your phone. Enjoy family-friendly STEM activities and explore over 80 unique vendors. Please don't miss the unforgettable R&B tribute to the legends. This is more than a festival. It's a celebration of Eatonville's rich cultural heritage. Visit zorafestival.org for tickets or to become a vendor. We'll see you in Eatonville, the oldest Black incorporated municipality in the country.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. As we have the swag heads, we'll get into that, talk about a little end of the season. We'll even sneak in with some MEAC in terms of that. And we'll get a chance maybe to talk a little bit about some of these tiebreakers. I think there's a lot of questions after such high matchups. What does this mean in terms of tiebreakers? And a lot of good information out there. We won't get too specific in what those tiebreakers. We'll save that for next week as we pull out the actual document so you can see those top 5 tiebreakers. But there's some that are pretty straightforward, and we'll give you that information as well. As we get into it, let's kind of look down the stretch at some of these schedules, which will get us even more information of what maybe some of these tiebreakers will look like. This is the remaining schedule for Jackson State. Jackson State next week gets right back into it as they close out the season on a conference slate. They're at Bethune-Cookman, that is currently 1-6. They host Arkansas Pine Bluff. Those Golden Lions are at 2-5. You have Mississippi Valley State comes to Jackson. That's 0-7. Then they close out on the road, which makes things a little more interesting. They have Alabama State currently at 3-3. And then they have the big rivalry game with Alcorn State sitting at 4-4. Braves fall after a tough loss to Southern. Let's go into FAMU to kind of give you their final games. And remember, they have a game that they have to make up, so that stretches things out a little more than normal. That comes at the end of the season when they traditionally close out like Jackson State and Alcorn against rivals. They have another game on the slate. So you have Southern at FAMU next week. You got Texas Southern coming to FAMU. That's homecoming. Then they travel to Prairie View. Long road trip there. They'll be on planes, I'm sure. Mississippi Valley at FAMU. And you have the rivalry game, the Florida Classic, Florida Blue, Florida Classic. That's FAMU at Bethune-Cookman. Then the makeup game is the week after, which is Alabama A&M at FAMU. So there's some intrigue in terms of some of those matchups. Again, I want to take a little liberty and talk about this side of the house where it really gets interesting in the Southern Division. We just talked about Southern traveling to FAMU next weekend. You have Southern at Alabama A&M. You have Bethune-Cookman coming to Southern. As Southern closes out the season, check this out, with 3 home games. Bethune-Cookman at Southern, I just mentioned. Arkansas Pine Bluff comes to Southern. And then while they'll be the home team, obviously in this case, you have the Bayou Classic with Grambling and Southern. Should be interesting, and that game is in New Orleans. Brandon, congratulations. I see Fatherhood has you doing your duties there. So we're gonna make sure we acknowledge that. A great fatherhood there. I love it. I love it with the twins. Alcorn State. When you look at them, they have Alabama State coming to Alcorn. They have Texas Southern as well. Then they go on the road to Prairie View, and then they have the big rivalry game. Just told you with them hosting Jackson State in terms of that matchup. So interesting a little bit there in terms of just in general. And we'll put this back out here because you were kind of mixing up a little bit there. The end, we talked about Tennessee State's season as they have a chance to close things out in their last game if they can hold things up. Could be for a conference championship. But in general, kind of what are your thoughts with those schedules? I'll start with you, Brian. What's on your mind in terms of schedule? Anything stand out to you, those breakdowns on the schedules?
Well, for FAMU, I think what's interesting is seeing that here we are getting into the last 6 games of the season, right? 5 of the last 6 games are in the state of Florida, with 4 of those 5 being in Bragg Stadium, where, the Rattlers have a nice winning streak. So that does give a little bit of confidence, despite all of the chaos and panic and feelings that Rattler Nation has. Southern is coming to town this Saturday, feeling pretty good about that. But Southern, it'll be interesting. Which Southern are we going to get? And so how the team responds after this game will be interesting. But I think what Rattler Nation is going to be looking at is they're looking over across the aisle, looking over at Jackson State's schedule. I mean, honestly. People are already.
That's right. I like that.
People are doing the
math. Your basket over there.
Let's just clear something up. One, FAMU will not have an opportunity to go to the playoffs due to the rescheduling of the Alabama A&M game, which is moved to the first weekend of the FCS playoffs. So that instantly eliminates us from even considering the playoffs. So it's all or nothing at this point for FAMU. It's either, hey, somehow the next 3 games for Jackson State, you're looking at they should win. And then we get to the last 2 games and you're looking at Alabama State and Alcorn. So for the FAMU side of things, FAMU will be rooting for Alabama State, which we rarely do, and we'll be rooting for Alcorn. Honestly, because that's what it'll take. It'll take 2 losses for FAMU to have an opportunity should they handle their business. Again, in 4 years now being in the SWAC, we have only lost to 1 team. So that gives confidence. Despite everything going on, it does give us confidence that we just got to do our job, and then we'll see what Jackson State does. Whether they handle their business or whether they trip up at the finish line, who knows? But you can only control what you can control. And so I'm sure that'll be the message today when Coach Colsey gets the team to block out the noise, trust each other, trust your coaches, and handle your business each week 1-0. And, we'll worry about what happens after November 29th on November 29th.
Brandon, I feel like we're in the courtroom, so I'm going to go Charles to ask him to retort.
The retort is if Jackson State just handles business, FAMU can start practicing jump shots. That's there's that reality if they just handle their business. Meaning, again, like I said, it struck me that most coaches they want to savor the victory. They don't want to they don't want to talk about the next opponent. Let me enjoy this for 24 hours. And it struck me that TC said our blinders are still on. Our goals haven't been accomplished with this win. So that jumped out at me. So they're taking Bethune-Cookman seriously. UAPB comes in for homecoming. That's a good football team in UAPB. We've seen what they've been able to do. Valley always plays Jackson State hard. It's just what it is. Okay. And then of course you got Alcorn, the rivalry game. So and for the people texting me right now, Doc, can you do this? Just help a Jackson State fan out. Because Brian mentioned, that everybody's going to be paying attention to Alabama State and Alcorn now in the West. from a tiebreaker standpoint, what does it mean?
Appreciate you putting that on the table, and we'll close out, and I'll give you a tiebreaker and kind of break it down. I think we'll get a chance to really go through that. Before I do that, Brandon, I'm going to ask you this from this perspective. What do you think the likelihood of that last game against the Red Hawks? How likely do you think that will be for a conference championship?
If they take care of business in the 3 preceding games, because they've got a bye.
He's a coach. Really good media person like that. If they take care of business, go ahead.
They've got UT Martin coming in. They're 2-1 in conference, and that's not a gimme.
Right.
They had a very, very close game last year, and Martin actually played earlier this season. SEMO, they only lost by them to 3 points in overtime, and SEMO has been the class of the Big South OVC. So that's a team that you've got to take seriously. When you look at Western Illinois, right now, they've won a couple straight, but defensively, they're very offensive user friendly. They're giving up about 42.5 points per game on the offensive side of the ball. So there's going to be some opportunities there. I think that's a game that they should win, and they have to win. So going into this last game against Southeast Missouri, they didn't play last year. They played in 22, and SEMO housed them 42-0. Gino has ran wild all over the dudes like a Hulkamaniac should, but it was.
Brandon, let me ask you this funner question, and it may be harder to ask, and you might not even want to answer and choose to send it for another time. With all the anticipation of this game against Howard, all the excitement, all the talk that the band wouldn't be there and people's disappointment and all that, I think it's intriguing that this year with the teams in the top 7, FAMU, Tennessee State, and Jackson, and those rivalry games go back for a while for different reasons, particularly in classes. How long is it going to take you to convince the new president and administration that it's time to get into the conference? What are you doing here, man? What are you doing?
Well,
that's hard. I'm sorry. Take a deep breath. I don't want you to get in trouble with any alumni presidents. You still need to keep your media pass. So we're gonna let you think about that. We'll talk about that off record. So I'll take that on. With that being said, let's get into the question that Charles had, the more serious question, so we can close this up. So, as you know, the Eastern Division and the Western Division will play against each other for a championship game. The team with the best overall record gets to host the game, whether they're out of the East or the West. Since the expansion, those games have come out of the Eastern Division. Specifically, we should just point it out that it's between being in Jackson, Mississippi, or Tallahassee, Florida, meaning between Jackson State and FAMU. And any indications that might be the same this year. So people wanting to know, tiebreakers. Your first tiebreaker is division, is your overall record, but what is the head-to-head? So if Jackson State somehow slips up and both teams end the season at 7-1, the first tiebreaker will be head-to-head. What was the matchup between FAMU and Jackson State? We have that on the record. It's finished. Jackson State won that game. Therefore, they would win the tiebreaker. Right? If it's 3 teams, somehow Alabama State, I should say, FAMU and Jackson State all end up with a 7-1 record. In this scenario, it's still a head-to-head tiebreaker, but in this case, all the teams would have beat each other, right? And so the next one is record of tied teams within the division. So who has the best record between those teams as you go down? You look at division play, who has the best record? Who finished 5-1? Who finished 4-2? Right? Then you go to head-to-head competition versus the team within the division with the best overall division and non-division conference records proceeding through the division. So that means after you do that, let's say all teams beat each other, all teams had the same record within the division. Now you go back and say, all right, we're going to look at the whole teams. What was your record against everybody in the SWAC and who had the best record? And you look at it based on who's at the top. So you proceed all the way down until you have the tiebreaker broken. So what these teams want to look at for Jackson State, they just want to win out. FAMU wants to find a way that either Jackson State loses twice or that Alabama State muddies it up, gets in the mix. But then they want to make sure that they have a better record against the top team at the top. So this matchup against FAMU and Southern next week becomes even more important. Obviously, you can't afford another loss, but you would like to see Southern. If you're FAMU, you want Southern. You want to beat Southern, obviously. But after that, you want Southern to continue to win because they would have a better record. Jackson State game against Southern did not count in the standings. So now their next best win would be over the second place team. Therefore, FAMU would win the three-way tiebreaker in that case, meaning that Alabama State didn't beat Southern either. So those are the ways that you want to look at 2-team tiebreakers and 3-team tiebreakers. Those are some of the examples out there in terms of the tiebreaker. What are your thoughts?
Let me ask it.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Doc, what's interesting, given the scheduling change of the FAMU Alabama A&M game, next week's Magic City Classic, or I should say Saturday's Magic City Classic, becomes very important in that scenario.
Yeah.
Because let's go with all intents and purposes. If A&M were to win that game, right, they having a loss to Jackson State kind of makes it interesting later on in the year. Let's just say the Bulldogs end up winning out, beating Alabama State. That means now that game at the end of the year becomes interesting should Jackson State stumble there at the end of the year. So there's two different ways that this scenario, this 3-team mythical scenario that Rattler Nation specifically is holding on to, because that's reality. Jackson State just knows control their destiny, win and end. But the next week's Magic City Classic goes a long way in sort of shaping what the narrative looks like later on in the season.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about the conference race. It's not just the one game scenario, the head-to-head matchup, which is extremely important, but you're also looking at the race in terms of tie scenarios, who has to win. So each week, as we go down the stretch, whether you're looking at the Western Division or the Eastern Division, these matchups are extremely important. Particularly, we always follow divisional, but these intra-divisional matchups become just as important when you start looking down the stretch, and not just in case of wins, but more so in terms of the tiebreakers. So yes, those overall records become important. So 2-team ties again. A is head-to-head competition between the 2 tied teams. Records of the tied teams within the division, head-to-head competition versus the team within the division for best overall division and non-divisional conference race proceeding through the division. Multiple ties within the division will be broken up first to last. Overall record versus non-divisional teams is the next, and then E is combined records versus all common non-division teams. Records versus common division teams with the best overall records. Is how you proceed. So these are some of the things when you get into who's hosting, it becomes even more interesting if you had teams with tied records at the end. Obviously, you had head-to-head matchups. So those why it becomes record. And then you have the number 4, which is interesting to me. Football Championship Subdivision Coaches Poll ranking can come into play if the tiebreakers get that far down. So it's set up. You can read this on the SWAC page. They have the tiebreaker just so people understand where I'm getting this information from. And there'll be a lot of talk between now and the end of the season. Each week after somebody wins or loses and where they get to that ledge and how far they get and what they scoop back, as Charles likes to talk about, you'll see where it comes from there. With that being said, it's time to tie a bow in this. We gave you your major division matchups. So now you can see where teams talk about. We'll get into some rankings on Tuesday. We'll release the mid-major, and then we'll get into some of those top 7, top 10 matchups from the poll rankings, whether it's mid-major or major division, because we're going down the stretch now, Charles, Brian, and Brandon. It starts to get good. It's big time. Thank you.
Got some head turner games coming.
Yeah. You're starting off with that FAMU and Southern. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop, along with Brandon King of sneakershop.talk.com. Make sure you go check out his page. Does some great write-ups, particularly when he talks about the matchups of Tennessee State. Release our poll write-up is also on his page as well. And just some good talk. We have one that's going to come out here where we're going to get into you and talk about what it looks like for conference expansion. We'll talk about that a little later. That's a nice little tease where he really gets into a great breakdown in terms of what imaginary April Fool's Day would look like maybe. Brian does his thing. Make sure you tune in to him tonight with Sports Wrap. He'll give you all the need to close out your season as well as open it up for the week. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday. As you see, I have my Prairie View gear on. It's homecoming week. I have to get on the road and go to Washington, D.C., so I'm going to see some of those sad faces as I'm on Howard Bison campus. I'm going to make sure I let them know that Brandon King has no sorrow. So as the deans of HBCUs get to mix it up a little bit there, but I'll be back and heading straight to Prairie View for homecoming. So just wanted the people to know that. Follow me as we look forward to next week and discuss some more of the news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That's DrKenyattacavil. That's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. I call it Twitter because I can. Facebook and YouTube is Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Brandon?
Lecture.
Brian?
Dismissed.